What's up, everyone? We got a jam-packed show for you all. Today, going over what I noticed for the Penguins in their loss on Saturday against Colorado Avalanche and what they can carry over to that game on Tuesday. Also going to have a message for some of the fan base because there have just been some wild takes being thrown around in a whole, bunch of platforms lately. So just want to touch on that. And also, again, we'll do a small preview, I guess, for the game on Tuesday, even though there really shouldn't be a preview, but, we're still going to go into, what the Penguins need to do this time in order to beat the Colorado Avalanche, and get into some practice updates for Monday. That's all coming up right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. So, of course, 2 days old, I know the Pittsburgh Penguins fall to the Colorado Avalanche 3-2 in what was perhaps one of the best games I think I've watched all season, no matter what team was on my television. I even put this on my social media. If we could just fast forward to mid-June, whenever the final starts this year, and have these two teams play a best-of-7 series, I would absolutely love it. I mean, this was incredible hockey, and the fact that Colorado was missing Kadri, Landeskog, Bowen, Byram, Sam Girard, a couple other players, and they're still chugging along, just goes to show how good they are. This was just a hell of a game. The Penguins, I really think that they played their butts off. I really have no problem just overall with their performance. I think in some areas it can be better, just responding after you score. I think that's going to be a big key for the Penguins going into the game on Tuesday. I didn't like, both times the Penguins scored, Colorado scores 25 to 30 seconds later, the last of which, Mike Matheson ties it. Less than 5 minutes left, gets to double-digit goals. We're like, okay, Penguins are going to try to get a point out of this at least, and it looks like they were going to do that. 30 seconds later, Nathan MacKinnon, an intentional shot off the boards, goes right to Devon Toews at the side of the net. No one even in the vicinity of Devon Toews. Empty net, nothing Tristan Jarry can do there. And the Avalanche go on to win. The Penguins were not able to score on the power play or on the 6-on-5. So I guess, the attention to detail was lacking a couple times. I think in the goals that the Avalanche scored after the Penguins knotted the game up both times. But, this game could also have been a lot different had Jake Guentzel buried that chance in the second period. Remember, he gets that puck right on his stick, right in front of the net, goes forehand, backhand, has Darcy Kuemper beat, who was playing a hell of a game. He's one of the best goalies the Penguins have gone up against this year. But the puck rolls off his stick. The Penguins are not able to score there. And that's a play that Jake buries 99% of the time. He has over 30 goals this year. He is their best pure goal scorer. It is very rare for him to miss that kind of chance. And, when you think about it, the fact that they lost, it kind of makes sense. If Jake is able to bury that, the Penguins definitely could go on to win that game. Poor Evan Rodriguez, he had chance after chance after chance, a couple mini breakaways. Darcy Kuemper was able to shrug those aside. He's now basically at the point, 2 goals in his last 34 games. And I don't think it's a lack of trying. He definitely is playing his tail off. I just, is he going to be a healthy scratch if this team ever gets healthy? But also, should he be a healthy scratch, even though the team right now is without McGinn and Zucker? I'm going to get to them a little later on in this episode. And honestly, you could argue just because he's not producing right now. And, I get it. He's definitely a tricky player to evaluate just because he was legitimately really good at the beginning of the year. I mean, this was not just a fluke. But I don't think any of us saw him basically taking a nosedive through the second half of the season. Is he going to stay in the lineup? I would think so. But again, I'm also not going to be super upset if he does come out of the lineup. I've seen some takes around that, some of these players down in Wilkes-Barre could replace something like Puustinen I've seen thrown around, or Angelo or whatever. And I'm like, I don't particularly see that. If you want to maybe make the case that Brian Boyle should be over him in the lineup, and then Jason Zucker and Brock McGinn come back for the playoffs, okay, that's maybe a little more reasonable. Radim Zohorna, I think he's NHL ready, but none of these other kids in Wilkes-Barre who have played fine this year are ready to take over someone who has double-digit goals this year and is honestly closing in on 20 goals if he can hopefully score a few more here down the stretch. Those kind of takes make no sense to me. But, I know I've been on a little bit of a tangent here. I apologize for that. But, overall, I do feel like the Penguins, just play better defense after those goals going into Tuesday. The second one, though, I will say this, I didn't like it from Tristan Jarry's standpoint. I think that's a save that he needs to make. There really wasn't too much traffic in front of him. Yes, I know it's a rocket from Albi Kubel, but he had a pretty good sight of it. I mean, it beat him, I think, low glove. If I have my notes here, yep. So, that's a save he has to make at the end of the day. The first and third goals, I'm not really going to blame him too much. Maybe you like to see him catch the first one from not Burakovsky, Ransonen, excuse me. The third one, Devon Taves, he's standing on the doorstep, no goalie. He's going to make that save. So I thought he was fine. But if he cuts back on that second goal that he allows, the Penguins, I think, will definitely be able to win the game, that's for sure. And, also the Penguins just have to stay the course. I mean, they fired over 40 shots on Kemper. He was really good. I mean, he's been one of the best goalies in the league the last few months. And, when he's at that level, Colorado is almost unbeatable. And that's been, I think, one of their biggest weaknesses these last couple of years is that Philip Grubauer has not been able to rise up to the level we're seeing right now from Darcy Kemper. If Kemper can keep this up into the playoffs, I do not know who is going to beat that team in the Western Conference, maybe outside of Calgary, and honestly, in the NHL or in the Eastern Conference too. They're so loaded both at forward and on defense. And, the fact that the Penguins played as well as they did in a building that the Avalanche have hardly lost in this year. I believe the record coming into this game on Saturday, they were 27-4-3 at home. And the fact that the Penguins were, 5 minutes away from taking it to basically a 50-50 at that point in overtime in a shootout, kudos to them. They can unquestionably play with the top teams in the league. And again, I know that's not good enough for some people. A lot of these fans have championship or bust mindsets, but, I'm going to say this right now, and some people aren't going to like it, but whatever. The Penguins, for as good as they are, only one team wins the Stanley Cup. Right now, it's unlikely that they will, just because of the odds against them. And I think people, when they probably do get eliminated at some point in the playoffs, even though I hope that does not happen, and I hope that the other fans that listen to the show and out there in Penguins Nation, that does not happen. When it does, I don't need to see the takes that, oh my God, this guy stinks, or oh my God, Mike Sullivan is bad, or oh my God, same old Penguins with that. It's just like, the East is so loaded this year that, almost no result, maybe outside of Washington winning a series against Florida, would particularly surprise me. So I loved what the Penguins did in that game. They should have gotten a point. I get that. It would have been a hell of a 3-on-3 session, but they can go out on Tuesday and go get the 2 points, because I know the Penguins can beat this team. They proved that, they can. I mean, they obviously came that close on Saturday, but, I was really impressed with what I saw. Sidney Crosby is just a one-man wrecking crew right now. 72 points in 58 games, got his 26th goal of the season. This is probably the best hockey I've seen him play, and probably since the pandemic started, I would think. This is some special stuff. And I know a lot of people take Sidney Crosby for granted. It's the regular season, I get it, but this is still a top 5 player in NHL history, and he is putting on a show night after night after night, and I don't think a lot of the national media is paying attention to it. That's whatever. Hopefully Sid can have a run for the ages at this year's playoffs. But, I'm definitely noticing it. And, he just, his hand-eye coordination with the puck on that first goal at the time of the game was superb, to say the least. Coming up in the next segment, I am going to have a message to, some of the fans Just what I've been seeing on social media and a couple other platforms for those that are not on social media. I will explain, everything what's going on. But before I get to that, this is the time of year that I've pretty much given up on all of my New Year's resolutions, but not this year. I'm sticking to resolution to eat right, thanks to Built Bar. Almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. Have you tried the Puffs? They're the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy. They are marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar. They are a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Heck, all Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. And yes, the Puffs are included. You can go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You will be blown away by what you see. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They'll make it taste delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy. And I don't know how, but they do it every single time. Now, you can go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15, and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. Now, as promised, here are some selections from our Mattress Factory Museum Twitter prompts that we ran a few weeks ago and an official response from the museum. When prompted, sports are art that we ran on the Locked On Penguins Twitter account. Jack_T, he linked us to the Chris Kunitz absolutely obliterating Hemo Timonen from the series against the Flyers in Game 3 of 2009. We agreed immediately, one of the biggest hits I have ever seen. Mattress Factory also says Kunitz is just pure power, and he has the championship and Olympic hardware to prove it. That is art, totally art. All of this comes from Mattress Factory, Pittsburgh's premier site-specific contemporary art installations museum. That's just a fancy way of basically saying actually immersive art. Remember, you can visit mattress.org/GoPens to get a free 1-year membership to Mattress Factory when you buy tickets for the Penguins game against the Boston Bruins on April 21st. That's 2.5 weeks away. So remember, visit mattress.org/GoPens to get a free 1-year membership to Mattress Factory when you buy tickets to the Pens Bruin game on April 21st. All right, we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So, Penguins Twitter and a whole bunch of other places have just been wild in lately. I saw when the Penguins lost the game against Colorado, it's like they just lost to the Arizona Coyotes or something. And, I posted a tweet, on my Twitter account. I quote tweeted, Josh Yohe's tweet. He obviously does great work with the Penguins for The Athletic, if I can find this here real quickly. Josh Yohe first tweet, the Penguins are having a terrific regular season. They're on pace for 108 points. They dealt with more injuries and illnesses than most of the teams. They just lost 3-2 on the road against the NHL's best team. And all I see is people, excuse my language, bitching about them. It is a tough crowd. And then I quote tweeted and I said, weirdest fan base in the world. They played their butts off and carried play against the best team in the league, but all you see is people saying first round exit again. And that's true. I mean, I've lost count of my mentions have been blowing up on my social media saying, well, the Penguins haven't won a series since 2018. And oh my God, the faults are really showing again with the team. And I'm like, I understand that team has faults. Don't get me wrong. I think every team in the league has faults, but if that is your immediate reaction to the Penguins losing a thriller of a game to the best team in the league, I think people need to get their priorities straight. These last 2 games, even going back to the game against Minnesota, was absolutely incredible hockey. The Penguins easily could have gotten 4 out of 4 points during these last 2 games against 2 of the 3 best teams in the Western Conference. And the fact that, I'm just going to read some of the takes I'm getting in my mentions, right now. Someone said they're an easy team to figure out. Every rush is the same. They have a weak defense. I don't know how someone can watch this team and actually say all that and mean it. Some guy said Penguins all goals every game the very next shift after scoring for 5 games straight. I mean, that's just not accurate because other than the Colorado game, I can't figure out the last time the Penguins allowed a goal within 30 seconds of scoring one. Was it the game against Carolina about a month ago when they scored twice within the first 11 seconds of the period? I can't think of any other game. That's for sure. It's just I don't understand it. People need to stop being so negative all the freaking time when it comes to this team. I mean, this team is really, really good. And the fact that, it inspires such little confidence in the fan base is truly just odd. Like, I don't get it. And I know, Twitter is not the end all be all for stuff, message boards or wherever, because obviously there's hundreds of thousands of Penguins fans out here, obviously probably in the millions too. But the fact that I keep seeing these weird takes from people where it looks like they only jumped on the team when they were just pretty good. It reeks of people who are like, they watch 5 to 10 games a year and not, the 70 or so that, I think all of you that listen to this podcast watch. And I think a lot of other fans obviously out there too. I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me. This is one of the best teams in hockey outside of Tampa, Carolina, and Florida. I would have the Penguins at that number 4 or number 5 spot. And, I saw last week too where people were saying, well, the Rangers are a matchup nightmare and all this. And, I look back and I rewatched parts of the 3 games again. And it's like, okay, the Penguins played them really good in the first one. That was basically a 50-50 because of the goalie battle. Penguins won it. They got blown out in the second one because they didn't show up. Okay. They also had some tired legs. Whatever. Third one, basically a 50-50. Shesterkin played really well. The Penguins were not getting the bounces, and the Rangers won. Okay, that was a game that the Penguins easily could have won as well. So I'm not really seeing people's points when they say, well, they would get crushed by the Rangers in a series, or this team is primed for a first-round exit. I think too many people have a championship or bust mentality with this team. And I understand that to a degree because they have won the Stanley Cup 3 times in the Sidney Crosby, Kenny Malkin era. They are probably the most successful team of the salary cap era outside of the Chicago Blackhawks. But I would argue the Penguins are more successful than Chicago because the Blackhawks have been total trash since 2016. So I would put the Penguins in that. But, these are some of the last few years that we're going to get from Sid, Gino, and Letang. Just appreciate what you're getting. Appreciate that this team is getting close to almost 20 years in a row of being in the Stanley Cup playoffs. One of the teams that actually has a shot at another championship. Appreciate the fact that Sidney Crosby has a point per game for a 16th, 17th straight season, 72 points in 58 games. Appreciate the fact that Chris Letang is playing some of the finest hockey of his career. Evgeny Malkin is closing in on 20 goals, and he's basically played for only 3 months of the season at this point. You have a Hall of Fame-worthy head coach behind the bench in Mike Sullivan, the best coach, I would argue, in this franchise's history, right up there with Badger Bob. And yet I still see so much pessimism when it comes to this team. I don't get it. People need to chill out. I think it's really not that serious. Yes, I know I get mad when they lose, 2 times, but at least, I try to, when I come on this podcast, when the team does lose, I try to take positives out of those losses and how that can be applied moving forward with the Penguins so that what happened does not happen again. So I just wanted to send that message to some of the fans out there, just because, my mention has just been blowing up on social media. And I think there needs to be more fans in this fan base that, are confident in this team going to the playoffs, because this team is really special. And again, this is probably the best assembled roster, hopefully fully healthy if they ever get there, since 2017. So I had to say that for everyone. Now, coming up in the next segment, we're going to get to some practice notes from the day on Monday and a couple other things as well. Before I get to that, though, betonline.net is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championship odds, podcasts, and reviews for all the different leagues this season. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, welcome back to this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. You're going to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can also follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So I already touched on the first segment, how the Penguins can beat Colorado in Tuesday a little bit. I already said that, they got to pay more attention to detail after they score goals, make sure Colorado doesn't get them on the counterattack. But, it's really as simple as just, if you play the way you did on Saturday, more times than not, you're going to beat any team in the league. Heck, even Colorado. Adam Gretz was making that point on Twitter on Saturday. You probably beat 30 teams in the league with that kind of performance, and heck, even times Colorado, who's just that good. So if the Penguins play like that again, they will be fine. And they just got to get a more of a timely save from Tristan Jarry, especially on that second goal. Special teams have to be a bit better, especially when you get a chance to score on the power play late in the game. You got to deliver there. The zone entries weren't good, and they weren't shooting enough, I don't think, and especially on the 6-on-5 situation there. And just better defensive hockey, better awareness, I think, in a late game situation such as there, where you're fighting to get a point and take the game into the 50-50 session for 3-on-3. You got to be better. You got to help out your goaltender a little bit. So I think if the Penguins do all those things, hopefully they don't have to work on the 6-on-5 because they'll be winning. I think the Penguins will be able to come out victorious and get points 93 and 94. So there were some practice notes today. Jason Zucker was back skating. So this injury does not seem to be nearly as serious as the hernia. There was still no update from Mike Sullivan. He said he's hopefully going to have something tomorrow. Definitely a bit weird that, we're closing in on almost a week now at this point, and they just do not have an update on his injury. The fact that he's already back on the ice, I know he didn't practice today, but the fact that he's already skating, that's really good news. I would have to think it's probably going to be a day-to-day situation, maybe week to week. But it definitely seems like we have not seen the last of Zucker this season, and but rightfully so. I mean, this team needs him back. He was so great in that game against Minnesota before he got hurt with that nasty check from Kevin Fiala. Saley Brockman game, he skated before practice. The earliest he can return is this Saturday, so he will not be playing on Tuesday against Colorado. I doubt he'll play on Thursday against the Rangers either. Maybe he'll play this weekend. We have to see if he gets into a practice at this point. And for those that don't pay attention to magic numbers or anything, the Penguins' magic number right now is 9. So the Islanders have a pretty tough schedule coming up. They have Dallas Stars tomorrow night, at the same night the Penguins play the Avalanche. Then they go to Carolina on Friday. Then they have St. Louis on Saturday. So if the Penguins are able to win tomorrow night against Colorado and the Islanders lose in regulation to Dallas, the match number goes down a little bit. I believe it's down to 5. Then if the Islanders lose on Friday to Carolina, all the Penguins have to do is win one of those last 2 games on one of those 2 games this weekend against Washington or Nashville, and they will clinch their spot in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So, if everything goes their way, which who knows if it will, probably not knowing this team's luck, Penguins can clinch a playoff spot as soon as this Saturday or Sunday, and it'll be another record-breaking streak as we're closing in on almost 20 years at this point, which is just hard to believe. I mean, the first year the Penguins made the playoffs, during that streak, I was like, I was 9 years old, and I'm 24 right now. I'll be 25 this year. So it's just pretty crazy to think about. But that will do it for this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm excited to see how the team responds tomorrow night in Colorado, in Pittsburgh. So the Penguins, 3 of their next 4 games are in Pittsburgh. They go to New York on Thursday. Then they play Washington on Saturday, who's really struggling. And then Sunday, they will play the Nashville Predators before 2 more games against the Islanders. And then they'll play the Boston Bruins a couple more times. So this is a pretty big stretch of games here coming up for the Penguins. If they can go like 4-3 or something like that throughout this stretch, that would be, I think, a job well done. 4-4, something like that, 5-3. That I think would be a job well done, in my opinion. So thank you all so much for listening to this episode. I did leave out one thing. Shout out to Mike Matheson, probably the best hockey I've seen him play ever. He's in double-digit goals. He is just, I think, transforming into a star before our very eyes. Maybe he's not going to ever be good enough to play on that top pairing and maybe even the second pairing. But man, has he been electric for the Penguins this year. And I really hope that continues down the stretch and into the Stanley Cup playoffs. So again, thank you all so much for listening to this episode. I will be back on Tuesday. I'll outline the week for you all right now. Tuesday, full game recap episode for the Colorado Avalanche game. Wednesday, we're going to preview the massive game on Thursday with John Check of Locked On New York Rangers. Thursday, I'm going to have a full game recap with Rachel Nones of the Hockey Writers. And then Friday, I'm going to try to bring on Adam Gretz from Pro Hockey Talk and Pennsburg to talk about this team and a multitude of topics surrounding the Penguins. Penguins. So that's what you can look forward to for this week's worth of episodes. And you can catch the next episode of this podcast on Tuesday evening. Have a great rest of your day.